Hello and welcome to Press TV's Top 5. The U.S. President Donald Trump has staged a fierce attack against federal judges who have blocked his controversial travel ban on people from 7 Muslim-majority countries.
I don't ever want to call a court biased, so I won't call it biased. And we haven't had a decision yet. But courts seem to be so political, and it would be so great for our justice system if they would be able to read a statement and do what's right. And that has to do with the security of our country, which is so important.
Trump also noted that his plans to build a wall on the Mexican border would definitely go ahead. He was defending his executive order at a meeting with sheriffs. The U.S. Federal Appeals Court has ended hearing proceedings on a lawsuit demanding reinstatement of the travel ban. The decision is expected later this week. Trump has vowed to continue the fight to uphold his travel ban, which has provoked national and international outcries. Dakotah Lilly, Students and Youth for a New America, joins us from New York to share with us his thoughts. So what are we looking at when you look at Donald Trump, your president, and the way that he has, carried out these executive orders, in particular this one, which has had such a backlash, and it's obvious that it's done more harm than good, but yet he says, and I'm going to quote him, that they're taking our weapons away.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the way the current administration is administering these executive orders. It's also important to note that over the past few administrations before him, there's been such a huge power grab by the executive branch, which has enabled Donald Trump to do this so mild-manneredly and so single-handedly. I think, obviously, these travel bans and executive orders are rooted in Islamophobia. And if you really look at the countries that were named in the quote-unquote travel ban, it's important to note that it's technically not a Muslim ban. These are, of the top 5 countries with the highest Muslim populations, not one of them is mentioned in the ban, yet countries which, such as Iran, are mentioned, and this is just another way for the United States and the Trump administration to continue its posturing against Russia and against Iran.
But at the heart of this travel ban appears, anyways, that there's discrimination at work here. And one doesn't need to look just at the executive order. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a counterterrorism program that the U.S. has in place, and now that program is going to be focused only on Muslims, as if terrorism equals Islam. Again, discrimination in nature. That type of approach is what Trump doesn't realize does not lead to national security.
Yeah, I mean, it's unsurprising coming from this president who has had support from leaders of the alt-right, like Richard Spencer, who has called for genocidal acts and for ethnic cleansing, as well as endorsements from notorious racists and homegrown terrorists. You know, many people seem to have this, when many people think in the United States think terrorist, they think of a Muslim. And I think that's the type of fear-mongering that has really been embedded in the American public over the past few decades. And I think it's something that Donald Trump really tapped into in his presidential campaign. But if one really actually reads and finds out what a terrorist in this day and age looks like, they're white, they're Christian, they're white nationalists, and they're people coming from and being raised in the United States. You know, people don't seem to understand that. I mean, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world is the United States government. And the United States has absolutely no problem with arming Wahhabi terrorists in Syria and having a checkered past with organizations such as the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, last question is, when you say people don't seem to understand that, I'm assuming that you also put Americans into that picture, but you seem to understand that, and I'm assuming you're American. So what sets you apart in your viewpoint? By you, I mean people such as yourself also.
Well, I do think Americans are in a very particular and unique situation where they're the things are so close to home, it's very hard for them to understand. And I mean, even our mainstream media is very, very complicit in keeping Americans in the dark this way. Also, things that many Americans believe when it comes to terrorists and Muslims are much easier to accept for them, as opposed to having to look at themselves and look at people that look just like them, these people, as the real terrorists. It's much harder for Americans to do that. So one really has to dig deep, and one really has to actually do research, something that I don't think a lot of Americans honestly do.
Okay, thank you for that. Dakotah Lilly, pleasure talking to you, students and youth for New America. Talking to us from New York. Thanks.